How did I meet Leo? I don't even remember how I met you. It's been a long time, right? Dude.
I think it was at that show with Pascal, right?
In person, right?
In person, yes.
So we had a cool occasion, right? Dude. Here, the great Master Pascal, right? Dude. Incredible drummer, right? That's right, a great friend, great musician. Great musician. And we participated in a project that was Pascal Morel's called Guitar Project. Wasn't that the name?
Yeah, several guitarists, right?
You recorded too, right?
I recorded 1 or 2 songs, yeah. Then there was that show at...
There was the show at...
In Stada Washington Stick.
In Stada Washington Stick?
That's when I met you in person.
The fateful day I burned my amp, right? You remembered, right?
Dude. I remember that because I felt so bad. You have idea. You were happy with that amp, right?
It was a ZT Lunchbox.
It was a different amp, right? Yeah. He turned it on, and wow, it was at 220. That was a great show. I turned it on. It was awesome, right? I turned on Nelson Faria's amplifier, right? There are some photos there that I took not too long ago. Did I see someone? You posted a photo on Facebook? But there's no video, right?
Dude.
Video. I don't really think there is. What a shame.
I actually just saw a video. We played together. We were jamming, trading some solos there. But there was a video. It was so bad and unwatchable. Like, I didn't even watch it, right? There was no way to watch it. I said, dude, there's no way to promote this video here. But anyway, for those who know Leo here, there was I think here in Brazil, guitarists got to know you through the solo of Denora with Linz, right? That really impacted me, man.
And outside too. Yeah, that solo. It brought me a lot of joy. Dude, it's funny, right? One thing you do is, because you have no idea, we never know the impact that anything we do will have.
Sometimes we do something and think, wow, this turned out great and it's done. No. And
it was a moment there from the DVD. Everything lived and it was really cool.
I'm even going to ask you, I'm going to jump to a topic that's further ahead. This is a solo that, man, it's not a technique, but it's that spear of the montunos where you are behind the chords, the tetrads, right? And it's a solo, man. This solo is a masterpiece, man. Thank you. Give some congratulations again. Thank you, solo there.
Good luck too, okay?
It's like if you died after this solo, by the way, it's already done. But dude, I wanted to know about the construction of this improvisation. Then I always notice when you play that solo, you improvise some things, but you have, in a way, this idea of Montuno doing some stuff there. Yeah. Talk a bit about that because I think it's an interesting process, Danilo. Welcome. Feel free, okay, brother? Coffee, water there? Yes.
It's because... Can you go back? Go ahead, feel free. Actually, Mateus, that solo, to be honest, I think that... I don't remember if I soloed in this song during the show. Because there's a lot of stuff in the DVD, kind of like it all came together, right? Ivan, we do the arrangements together with Ivan. Ivan is an amazing guy to work with in that sense too, because he's not a guy who demands, play this, play that instead, right? Those arrangements were very, very common. It's the band. Each one contributed an idea. Let's do it this way. I really don't remember if I soloed in this song, so the solo actually was really an improvisation. That right there, I didn't prepare anything at all. No, I know it's improvisation, but I didn't think about the construction of the solo. Do you understand? It was that thing that, and to be honest with you, I don't think about it much. No, you don't think about it. When it comes to soloing, I think the solo for me, there has to be a dynamic of growth. Okay, the only thing that seems to me is this, unless there are some solos that start right off, right? It depends on the song, right? Yes, but in this case, he exposes this song and then there's a downward dynamic, right? Yeah, so it created that kind of suspended vibe, right? And there's that riff, right? So it's more of a vibe like, then that came out, man. I don't even know how.
It's not because I talked about this issue, because when I saw you improvise, I noticed that you kept this idea of the mounds.
Later, I started to keep it up, but I was already doing that before. This way of playing, let's say, I always like it, right? Because for me, the rhythm Yeah, I'm really going to say it for me. The rhythm is the main part. The music, if it doesn't have rhythm, man, what's the melody? Man, it's hard to say that, right? But, but,
But I think so in your way of playing, you're a very rhythmic guy.
I think the best day is fundamental harmony, of course. But what happens is that I'll give you an example for this Cuban music. You can't generalize, but in a way, common, general. Cuban music is not a music that is characterized by incredible melodies or harmonies. Super complex, but the rhythm is killer. Got it. So, no one just sits there in Cuban music, right? I think rhythm is fundamental, and I've always had this attraction to rhythm since I was little, right?
That's a funny thing because rhythm is a very Latin characteristic, right? Sure. But why not European? Why not American, right?
Because, I don't know, I think it's American too, right?
But in Brazil, we have It's a Power, right? Dude,
It comes from Africa, right? That's explanation. And in Europe, there wasn't that African influence, right? There has been in recent years, but no, looking back, like there was in Latin America, if it hadn't been, unfortunately, for the tragedy that was slavery, we ended up inheriting a wonderful culture. So if that hadn't happened, I wish it had happened in a different way, that they had come in another way. But I'm saying it like this. This African influence is fundamental. In all our rhythms, in Uruguay we have candombe, Cuban music, Brazilian music in general. And of course there are other influences from Europe. Obviously, from Portugal. From the harmony, from Portuguese rhythms, including, there are things in Brazilian music that come from there. This mix, right? But Africa, without a doubt. It is, of course, it's fundamental. There, right. I've always liked that a lot, right?
I think there's also the issue of Europe, right? A lot of influence from classical music. So you, in a way, have a music that's a bit more intellectualized too, right?
Harmonically more interesting. Exactly. It's not that European classical music doesn't have rhythm. Of course, if you take a piece by a young lady, not so much, I don't know, I'm not really an expert in classical music, but Beethoven, for example, his music is super rhythmic, right?
Yeah, but it's a different kind of rhythm, a little more binary, but it's a rhythm that's more focused on the melodic instrument.
But there are five, man, yeah.
Dude,
Yeah, it doesn't have that. I mean, but it's not that African thing with the drum. Yeah, it's a different kind of rhythm, right? Rhythm, right? I'm not separating, so to speak, but this Cuban vibe really comes from the drum, right?
but we're talking about those montunos there, which are very characteristic of the piano, right? Dude, are you talking about Cuba? It's very characteristic of that region. Did you actually learn those things, or was it really something that came through osmosis? You were just listening and it got absorbed like that?
Look, an interesting detail. I left Uruguay, right? Well, later we're going to talk about this in more detail. But I left Uruguay and went to the Netherlands. And that's pretty new, right? And in the Netherlands, that's where I really came into contact with Latin music, believe it or not. In Uruguay, I didn't have that contact with Cuban music, with Panamanian and Puerto Rican music.
But why? Because in a way whoa, people are seeing me as Latino here. I have to take advantage of that.
No. It's because there were musicians there from all over the world. I started making friends who were Cuban, friends who were from Panama, Colombians, musicians. I got it. I started playing with them and began to learn to dive deeper in the rhythms of those countries, right? No, US, Cuban music and everything, but back then, basically it was more Brazilian music, American music that was played on the radio, It's because of Uruguay, right?
Geographically, he's very tiny.
Small, right?
How many people Uruguay have?
3.5.
3.5 million. Yeah, to compare with Brazil, 220 million. Yeah. That geographically, Brazil must be 10 to 15 times the territory of Uruguay. I can imagine.
Or even more.
Or more.
Now, what also happens is that, for example, Brazil, even though it's such a big country, in Brazil, nowadays maybe people know a bit more. but also Cuban music. Here, it's not something that, no, it's not. So like in Europe, in the Netherlands, by chance, which has nothing to do with Cuba, that's where I came into contact with this music, right? And since I've always really liked rhythm, I was blown away. When I started listening to that, I started listening to Julio Sovaldes. Those guys. I said, wow, man, Paquito da Ribera, a bunch of artists that I didn't know, right? But what caught my attention a lot, more than the piano, of course, the piano too, right? It was the timbal. I think the timbal, the instrument.
Incredible. And what's the rhythmic idea that I'm not sure anymore.
So are you talking about a timbal solo? The timbal is the name of the Cuban music. You're talking, right? Okay. There are two timbales, right? They're two little metal drums that they play on the side. So more like a shell, okay? And on the skin, and there's a cymbal, and they have a bass drum too. They have a little bass drum and the cymbals, right? So it's the dream frasquero of timbal. The solo of Narado is basically the timbal solo, just on the guitar. And if you brought it, you transcribe this solo and pass it to a timbal, it's going to be cool. That's how I think even now. And I still think that way. Not always. It depends on the foam ballad. Something like that, I'm moving on to another one.
It's because it created that kind of polyrhythmic effect, right? There's a stability in the band and you start to create. We also teach you, it goes a bit out and then comes back.
And one interesting thing is that because of this arrangement, you just clearly said that the band keeps that motif without leaving there. I think it's important because sometimes moving on to another topic, sometimes I think that polyrhythm, for me, it works in contrast to something that's holding the...
And that's it, because otherwise it's not even polyrhythm, it's just chaos. Then everyone goes, okay, engaging together, right?
A lot of people play that way and it just ends up being a mess, right? To make it, it needs to have a background, right? Actually, contrast, there has to be a contrast. Someone has to hold it so that this policy really has the effect it needs to have. And in that case, that sensational band, obviously, and it worked well, right?